The Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden is a terrifying ancient torture device. It's a large, coffin-like structure with spikes on the interior walls. When the victim is placed inside and the door is closed, the spikes penetrate the body but avoid vital organs, leading to a painful and slow death. This terrifying device was designed to cause the most pain, while extending the suffering of its victims. Waterboarding. Waterboarding is a form of torture that imitates drowning. The victim is strapped to a board with their face covered by a cloth. Water is then poured over their face, triggering the gag reflex and causing a sense of drowning. This method leaves no physical scars, but causes serious psychological trauma and an intense fear of death. Boiling. Boiling, as a method of execution, is as horrific as it sounds. The victim is either placed in a container of boiling liquid or gradually lowered into it. This results in tremendous pain as the skin breaks down and peels away, and the flesh cooks. Death can take minutes or hours, depending on the temperature of the liquid. The Heretic's Fork. The Heretic's Fork is a simple yet cruel device. It is made of a metal fork with 2 spikes placed between the chest bone and the chin, preventing the victim from moving their head. Any attempt to do so would cause the spikes to penetrate deeper into the flesh, resulting in constant pain and extreme discomfort. Immurement. Immurement involves securing the victim up inside a small enclosed space, leaving them to die from starvation and dehydration. This method is extremely cruel, as it causes both physical and psychological suffering. The victim is left alone in the darkness, knowing their fate is sealed and experiencing a slow and painful death. Burning at the stake. Burning at the stake was a common execution method for those charged with witchcraft or treason. The victim is tied to a stake, and a fire is lit beneath them. The flames slowly consume the body, causing great pain and suffering. This method was not only miserable, but also served as a public display to generate fear. The rack. The rack is an ancient torture device used to stretch the victim's body. The victim's wrists and ankles are tied to rollers at opposite ends of a wooden frame. As the rollers are turned, the body is gradually stretched, dislocating joints and tearing muscles. The pain is unbearable, and the torture often leads to permanent damage or death. Keel hauling. Keel hauling was a punishment used by sailors. The victim is tied with ropes and dragged under the ship's bottom, scraping against barnacles and sharp objects. This results in serious wounds and injuries. The victim often drowns, bleeds to death, or dies of infections caused by the wounds. Poena Cullei. Poena Cullei is an ancient Roman punishment for murdering another person. The punished person is stuffed into a leather sack with many different animals, such as snakes, dogs, and monkeys, and then thrown into a body of water. The small space and the presence of the animals create a terrifying and chaotic environment that leads to a horrific death. Scaphism, or the boats, is an ancient Persian method of execution. The victim is trapped between 2 boats, their bodies covered with milk and honey. This attracts insects that feed on and breed in the exposed flesh. The victim is left to suffer from insect bites, infections, and exposure, suffering a slow, painful death. The thumbscrew. The thumbscrew is a simple but painful device. The victim's thumbs are placed in a grip, and pressure is slowly applied by turning a screw. This crushes the bones and tissues, causing extreme pain. It was often used to extract confessions or information from the victim. Death by sawing. Death by sawing was a horrific method used in ancient times. The victim is hung upside down, and a saw is used to cut through the body, usually starting from the bottom and moving towards the head. The upside-down position provides a constant blood flow to the brain, increasing consciousness and the suffering of the victim. Judas Cradle. The Judas Cradle is a pyramidal torture device. The victim is raised above the pyramid and lowered onto its sharp point, which is inserted into the anus or vagina. The victim's body weight causes tremendous pain and internal injuries. This method was designed to cause maximum humiliation and suffering. Crucifixion. Crucifixion is an ancient method of execution, most famously linked with the Romans. The victim is nailed or tied to a large wooden cross and left to hang until they die from weakness, exhaustion, or exposure. This method was slow and painful, often taking days for the victim to die. Lingchi. Lingchi, also known as death by 1,000 cuts, was a Chinese method of execution. The victim is tied to a post and small pieces of flesh are slowly cut off over an extended period of time. The process could take hours or even days, leading to unimaginable pain and suffering before death. Flaying. Flaying involves removing the victim's skin while they are still alive. This method is incredibly painful, as the skin contains lots of nerve connections. The process often results in shock, serious bleeding, and infection. Death is usually slow and miserable, making flaying one of the most brutal torture methods. Strappado. Strappado is a form of torture where the victim's hands are tied behind their backs and they are raised into the air by a rope attached to their wrists. The weight of the body causes extreme pain in the shoulders, often resulting in dislocation. This method was used to extract confessions or punish prisoners. The iron chair. The iron chair is a spiked chair designed to cause pain and psychological fear. The victim is secured into the chair, and the spikes penetrate the skin, causing great pain. Additional pressure can be applied by tightening straps or adding weights, increasing the suffering of the punished. This method was used to extract confessions or as a punishment. The Brazen Bull. The Brazen Bull is an ancient Greek torture device. The victim is placed inside a hollow bronze bull, and a fire is lit beneath it. The metal heats up, roasting the victim alive. The bull was designed to amp up the victim's screams, making them sound like the screams of the bull, adding a horrific element to the torture. Paur de Arara. Paur de Arara is a torture method used in Brazil. The victim is hung from a pole with their hands and feet tied together, creating a painful, unnatural position. This causes serious muscle cramps and joint pain. It was often used to extract confessions or information from political prisoners. Drowning. Drowning, as a form of torture, involves forcefully dipping the victim's head underwater until they nearly drown. This method causes panic and fear as the victim struggles for breath. It can cause serious psychological trauma and, if repeated, can lead to death through oxygen deprivation. Spanish donkey. The Spanish donkey is a device used to torture prisoners by forcing them to sit on a sharp, angled wooden board that looks like a donkey's back. Weights are often attached to the victim's feet, increasing pressure on the pelvic area. This method causes extreme pain and can lead to permanent injury or death. Hanging. Hanging is a method of execution where the victim is held up by the neck using a rope. Death usually occurs from a choked up or broken neck, depending on the technique used. This method was commonly used for centuries and served as a public display to discourage crime. Cangue. The cangue is a wooden board that fits around the victim's neck, preventing movement and causing discomfort. The victim is often forced to wear the cangue for extended periods, leading to physical pain and humiliation. This method was used as a form of punishment and public shaming in ancient China. Whirligig. The whirligig is a historic torture device designed to cause dizziness and drowsiness. The victim is strapped into a wooden cage or frame, which is then rotated rapidly. This constant spinning causes extreme nausea, dizziness, and intense anxiety. The victim's lack of ability to control their movements adds to the psychological suffering, making the whirligig a uniquely cruel method of torture that leaves no physical scars but causes extreme mental and physical suffering. Scold's Bridle. The Scold's Bridle, also known as the brank, was a humiliating punishment for bold women or those accused of witchcraft. It is a metal cage placed over the victim's head, with a gag that presses down on the tongue, preventing speech. The device often had spikes to further injure the mouth if the victim tried to talk. This method was designed to silence and shame, causing significant pain and public humiliation. Make sure to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.